Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter. Of course, you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. Let's talk about Dmitry Bivol and his masterclass against ZURDO Ramirez. We'll also talk about a few of the fights on the undercard. We're going to get technical. We're going to get deep discussing it all. I wasn't able to bring you guys a technical breakdown video this week, unfortunately, and I was really excited about this card, so I wanted to, but I've just been swamped with work. All week has been manic for me. I've been up and down the country. In fact, yesterday, I bumped into somebody in a supermarket in the Midlands. I'd stopped off just to grab something to eat, and a gentleman walked up to me and said, "Excuse me, are you Chris Andre?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, listen, I'm a big fan of your boxing podcast and of Hatman's too." That's only happened to me on another couple of occasions, and that's always been closer to home. So for it to happen to me in the Midlands was quite a surreal thing. A really nice guy. I believe he said his name was Daniel. I asked him his name and, you know, if he's got a Twitter thread name or a YouTube name that he leaves comments on, just to know if I've interacted with this guy and stuff. He said, "No, I don't do any of that, but I just, you know, watch yours and Hatman's podcasts, and, you know, I'm a big fan." And it was a lovely moment. And I asked him his name, and I think he said Daniel, but I'm not sure if he was I don't know, in a rush or something, but he sort of mumbled at that point. I think he said Daniel. So shout out to Daniel. He can attest to the fact that I've been up and down the country all week. It was a lovely moment. Even after he left, the lady at the till said, "Oh, what a nice thing." I said, "Yeah, it was lovely actually." So thank you, Daniel. Really nice to be approached by somebody like that and to be recognized for what you do and to say that they enjoy your work. I really appreciate that. So thank you. In terms of the preview though, what I did do is leave a little thread on Twitter just to share my thoughts. And I basically said that potentially this is a very problematic fight for Bivol. Although he's more than capable of beating taller fighters, as he's shown time and again, stylistically speaking, his skill set is built around controlling distance. ZURDO is naturally bigger, taller, and has a longer reach and gets behind a very effective jab. Bivol will have to work his way in with feints and his ability to bounce in and out. He's a master at this, but if ZURDO can read the entry points, he can time Bivol's entry. And if he can target the body in particular with backhands and a left hook, he might be able to impose himself to wear Bivol down or land something big. However, whilst I rate ZURDO as a fighter, when he is the one leading against a guy that isn't standing right in front of him, he can overreach slightly to land, and it can affect his ability to reset quickly. In other words, if he overreaches, by the time he pulls back up to get his balance and his construct, there's a bit of a delay there. He's good at pivoting out and rolling with shots when he is in defensive mode, but he's still there as a target right after he does his work. So if you can find it, so you can find him if you punch with him or immediately after him. As a result, I expect a cagey Bivol to be outscoring him in a very tight fight early on. ZURDO might then have to try and chase him down, and if he's losing those early boxing exchanges, it could set up an exciting finish. I believe this is the biggest threat Bivol has ever had, but ultimately I think his feet are too good to be at mid-range for long enough periods for him to lose the fight. I expect him to have just enough to win the fight on points. Let me know your thoughts. So the pattern of the fight went exactly as I expected. What they were both good at doing, what would be ZURDO's undoing and his weaknesses, exactly. But I did not expect it to be as one-sided as this. I thought we were looking at a 7-5, 8-4 type of fight. I personally had Dmitry Bivol winning the fight 10 rounds to 2. This was a masterclass. In the first round, he came out, and as expected, it was a very cagey opening. But because of that slow reset, when ZURDO does get his work off, it allowed Bivol to catch him whenever ZURDO was landing something of his own and pulling out. So you could see exactly what I was sort of talking about in that little build-up there. What I did find interesting is that Bivol was actually choosing often to step on that lead foot, purposely. I was noticing him doing it right from the off, and the referee actually called him up on it, so that was really good refereeing. Or he would actually step inside the lead foot of Ramirez, and I actually felt that he was doing that to provide some bait. He knew that Ramirez, like I said, overreaches a little bit, so if I can just get on the inside to line him up, myself up with that backhand, as it offers that bait, if Ramirez takes it, I can then slide out of range, come back in and punish him for it. The second round, I actually had going to Ramirez, and again, it was something we picked up on that could be a weapon for Ramirez. It was that long shot to the body, and Bivol was not timing him quite right in that round. You know, he still had to find his range a little bit, but there was a little extra something that I noticed that I didn't expect pre-fight, and that was that Bivol was reacting quite a bit to the feints that were downstairs to the body from Ramirez. So when he'd come low to target the body, what happened is Bivol's got an active high guard. So rather than just having a high guard where he doesn't move and he's just relying on his feet, he would have that high guard and he'll maintain a high guard, but he's active with it. So while it's up there, if you're going to shoot a little bit lower, he might bring his hands together, he might lower his hands, he might change the angle of his head and his hands to create a shield, turtle shell almost, and then use his feet to step out of range as well. So he dictates the range, but also reacts to what it is that you're throwing. When a guy's when he's got a passive high guard and his hands are just stuck up there, you know where the gaps are automatically, so you can create those gaps. You can engage the guard itself and create openings and go around the guard, through the guard, under the guard and things like that, around the back of the guard. When somebody's got an active high guard though, you can manipulate where you move their hands to. So I know if he's going to lower his hands to parry what I'm going to do, if I throw a throwaway shot to the body and then come upstairs, it's potentially opening him up by pretending to go to the body, coming upstairs with something big. And I said that you had to be careful of that, Dmitry Bivol. And on 3 separate occasions during this fight, he got caught with a throwaway shot downstairs, a throwaway backhand to the body. He would lead with a backhand to the body and then come over the top with a right hook. And on all 3 occasions, it landed. So it was a shot that was on there for Ramirez, but obviously, if the whole point of misdirection is to do it sporadically, otherwise he's going to read your patterns and know that you're doing it. So he wasn't able to have too much success in the sense that he wasn't able to set up something big. But we'll talk about the significance of this moving forward in a moment. The third round was one of those rounds that was a little bit contentious. It was a swing round. I personally had it going to Dmitry Bivol. I had a couple of my followers felt that it went to Ramirez, so did the commentary team. I had another couple of my followers that also felt that it went to Dmitry Bivol. And the way I see it is, I think that Dmitry Bivol takes an awful lot on the wrists, the forearms, the elbows, the biceps, the shoulder. You saw in the first round, Ramirez threw a hook to the body and it caught Bivol on the bicep. And I think it was Barry Jones that said, I'm not sure if it landed clean, so he did acknowledge that, but he said it was a good body shot. It was good that he went to the body. I don't think it did land though. It wasn't a scoring shot. It landed to the bicep. And I think he's very good at catching shots like that, Dmitry Bivol. So I had the third going to him. The fourth I then had going to Bivol for sure. The point is, after 4 rounds, I've either got it 3-1 to Bivol, or many of you had it 2-2, which again marries into what we were saying pre-fight about how I felt that this was a sort of fight that could have been cagey early on, but that ultimately Bivol would start to pull away and then Ramirez would have to take risks. Well, from that 4th round onwards, I didn't have Gilberto Ramirez winning another round until round 10. And even then, it felt like Bivol had been preserving energy. Like he just took his foot off the gas for a round, thinking I'm well ahead. I'm setting myself up for a strong finish here. And for me, one of the things that made this one of the best fights of the year, you had the commentator say, the main commentator, why isn't he fighting Mexican style? Why isn't he targeting the body a lot more? For years, I've been telling people how good Dmitry Bivol is, and people are still sleeping on this dude. If you just try and walk this dude down and throw combinations, he's going to light you up because he's so light on his feet and he's so good at coming back with attacks the moment you fall short or let go of your own work. That's when you're at your most vulnerable. And that's when he punishes you. And when I did the preview for Canelo Bivol, and I said that, listen, I expected Bivol really to get robbed, to be honest with you. But I explained in that preview, I cannot see a way in which Canelo actually wins the fight. Not just this is a competitive fight. Of course, he's always got a puncher's chance. He's great at misdirection. He could set something up. But stylistically speaking, I cannot see how Bivol, if they fight at their best, will lose this fight. And one of the reasons was, one of the key things that I identified in that video was that ability to slide just outside of range and come straight back in with attacks of his own. And by and large, that's what won him the fight tonight. But in round 9, what really put an exclamation mark on this performance for me, and it was one of the best performances of any fighter in the entire year, and it puts him right up there now for being the fighter of the year, in my opinion, for this year, and he's certainly in the top 10 pound for pound. It was the fact that he chose to take his back up on the ropes in round 9. He decided, I'm going to fight Ramirez's fight. And while he's on the ropes, just where Ramirez wants him to be, and Ramirez is landing a couple of left hooks to the body, another shot that we spoke about is potentially dangerous to him. A lot of them were being caught on forearms and biceps. Bivol then comes to life with his back on the ropes, throwing combinations of his own. And by the end of their little exchange, their little affair on the ropes, it was Bivol that is backing him up with these fluid, vicious combinations. This dude is a very serious fighter, man. I thought in the next round, like I said, he took the round off preserving and came on strong again. For me, I had it 10-2. One of the judges had it the same. The other 2 judges had it 9-3. It was a masterclass. One thing I will say, though, the fact that he's got that active high guard and he responds to what guys are doing. When it comes to someone like Beterbiev, it's very possible that he ends up being manipulated into biting on the feint and then something big comes up top which could change the course of the fight. By the same token, we spoke post Joe Smith Jr. how Beterbiev can sometimes literally run in, crossing his feet as he runs in, shifting without taking his head off the line. You can't do that against Dmitry Bivol. You'll be walking onto big shots that could put you on your backside. So there are areas where both of these guys are going to fancy to exploit the other one. If you're looking for an underdog that could potentially do something against Dmitry Bivol, I would say Anthony Yarde. And I've also said this about Beterbiev, by the way. Not because I believe Anthony Yarde is at their level. I don't. I think he would have a puncher's chance, though, because he's got the athleticism and the speed, but he's also good with misdirection. If he could potentially lure one of these guys onto a big shot, he has the sort of power and athleticism where he could do it quickly to change the course of the fight. I don't think he'd be able to do that, don't get me wrong. I would fancy either one of those guys against Anthony Yarde. And if Yarde does beat Beterbiev, he's not going to be such a big underdog going into the Bivol fight, right? But the point I'm making here is if you're really looking for an underdog and you're interested in somebody out of left field that might be able to cause an upset, it may very well be Anthony Yarde. But generally speaking, I think these two are head and shoulders above everybody in the division. And if you're talking about straight technique and skill set, Dmitry Bivol is an elite level fighter, man. The man is absolutely incredible. I've been saying it for years and people were rubbishing it and saying things like he's boring, echoing Bob Arum's statements about why he didn't want to make Beterbiev Bivol. It's a boring fight. Please, I don't want to hear any more of that now. Not only is he very entertaining these days, you know the level we're talking about here. Let me know what you think about this. One thing I will say lastly, a lot of people have been saying, well, who's Ramirez actually fought? He's 44-0, but he hasn't actually fought anybody. Listen, there are a lot of guys that are put on a pedestal that are, you know, supposedly stars of the sport of boxing that do not have the type of CV that he's got. He's beaten the likes of Sullivan Barrera, Gonzalez, Jesse Hart was a very good win. Arthur Abraham was a little bit past his best when they fought. But make no mistake, he was coming off of a run of some good wins. He'd beaten Stieglitz twice, he'd beaten Paul Smith, he'd beaten Martin Murray. Now you might say to me, listen, Arthur Abraham was a much smaller guy and he wasn't the same outside of middleweight and things like that. You know, against bigger guys. I accept that, that's true. But he wasn't a bum. Vlasov is a very good win. Vlasov, in my opinion, beat Joe Smith Jr. and Joe Smith Jr. was the most recent victim of Artur Beterbiev. So let's not get it twisted. This is not a bum who's been in there with a bunch of tomato cans. He's a very good fighter. He has beaten some good fighters, some good B-grade fighters. And today he was just up against an elite level fighter, and I did not quite expect it to be a 10-2 type of performance. But superb stuff from Dmitry Bivol. Let me know what you think. Let me know how you think the Bivol-Beterbiev fight goes after tonight. And also, who from left field? Maybe Anthony Yarde, maybe somebody else. Who out of left field would you give somewhat of a chance to? Maybe you think, like I think, that Bivol and Beterbiev beat everyone else in the division. But if you had to select somebody, if someone said to you, pick any fighter you want outside of Beterbiev and Bivol, and if they deliver for you, we'll give you £1 million. Who are you picking as a little outsider from light heavyweight to beat Dmitry Bivol, and why? Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Take care. God bless.